Okie dokie, everybody. Welcome back. You're here at the Fox Den with Pater Voss, the Papa Fox. And we are going to continue playing Pillars of Eternity by Obsidian Entertainment. When we last left off, we had explored most of First Fires. There's still a couple of places we still have yet to go. And we find ourselves in the Crucible Keep. We had just went into the War Room, and we did not fight anybody. So there was no fighting in the War Room. We had gotten a quest to go take a look at a district that has some hinky stuff going on in there. Look, if you, I missed this last time, but Ader wants to talk to us. So let's go ahead and chat him up.
Strange place for a shrine to Abidan, Crucible Keep. Maybe it made more sense at some point before it gathered all that dust. The only thing the Knights of the Crucible worship these days is the nobility, as far as I understand it.
I knew some of the soldiers who got recruited by the Knights after the war was over. They told me about it. We get these young kids in here and they tell them about blacksmithing, about the revolution, about tradition. Talk about the golem like he created the Crucible Knights and is forged to go win Deerwood's independence. Then they join, and it turns out all any of those knights ever talks about is, when are we going to get recognized as a real knighthood? When are we going to get our titles and our land? Our High Justice wants to be an earl, says it's Abaddon's will. He's got a castle and an army. You wonder how long he'll wait before he starts a war over it, saying Abaddon told him to. They don't seem all bad. Will respond that they're good. Seems like some members do still take their ideals seriously. You see it with the older knights, some of them. They were taught differently. I feel for them. Seeing all that slowly wearing away around them, with nothing to be done because the wrong people are in charge. Shame they don't have better people leading them. True.
Sure.
Makes quite a bit of sense.
Sure.
Sure it does, yes. That's one of the interesting things about organizations like that. I mean they change over time. I mean, without things require change. If they stay stagnant, they end up they don't just stay the same. They end up regressing. They end up They end up worrying more about their personal comfort than they do about the context in which they live. And that's important to keep in mind. Let's actually take a look at the journal real quick. The Hallowing of the Deerwood, never far from... find a way into the Temple of Woodica. But we have a bunch of other things we need to do. Built to last. Okay, this one we have to... Scrivener's Dormitory in Copper Lane at all costs. Return to Verrazano. Okay, we are definitely going to talk to him after we get through with the Capital Keep. I'm not going to do that yet. Still working on that. Master Below, Trials of Durance. Let's actually go ahead and talk with Durance. See if there's anything we can glean from him. I had some questions.
If doubts and curiosity plague you, you're skinning your knuckles on the wrong door.
I'll just ask you about the region and its history. Do you know anything? Oh, right, because we have to just continually talk with him. Do you know anything of the Deerwood and the surrounding nations? Deerwood's the best of them. Still has spirit, if a land can have one. It's a place where a man can walk freely, even make new roads, and that's a rare thing in this world. Its generations, however, are damned, so no new footfalls may yet spell an end to it. Do you mean the Hollowborn? Yes. Eothas' last stab at revenge after he was ended. Durance frowns. Eothas was the god of rebirth, and his light does not fall on the Deerwood. I've heard some claim it's his doing, his death. It's closed the halls to new souls. I don't believe it. The problem is closer than that, and as always, it involves women and men. And they're always circling, within and without. The Valiant Republics, Raid Ceres, the Saints' Wars. One big bladed spiral, shredding everything around it. How do you feel about the Valian Republics? Fortune seekers garbed in robes of office, manipulators, traitors and traitors all. You don't hold them in high regard? Any country so obsessed with style might as well be wearing scarves over their eyes. Keep vigilant or they'll turn you into slaves as soon as the ink dries on the trade treaty. The Deerwood and all its internal riches is too tempting, especially if someone else tames the country and the face painters for them. Face painters? Durance waves his hand dismissively. Tribes, Glanfathans, cluster around the ruins like flies. What about Raid Saris? Durance's face flushes, and a sheen of sweat forms on his brow. Too many adjectives to that so-called nation. Civil unrest, economic collapse, all tinder, just needing the right spark. Some farmer shows up, takes a god into himself, then takes a crown on his head. This divine kingdom he tries to set up goes about as well as you'd expect. A trickle of sweat runs down the side of Durance's cheek and sinks into his beard. Suddenly, the population of heretics goes up by about half and again, and Aethys starts turning his blood-stained gaze to every blasphemer he can find. Cleaning house is one way to put it. His face darkens and his eyes narrow. His eyes narrow. I think that's how it's supposed to be. Purge is another. Put them and their god in their place, though, with enough force to kill that damned country, too. You're not a supporter of the country of Raid Saris? Aloth passes by casually, muttering under his breath. Surely you know where this is going by now. It's not a country, it's a gathering of cowards, Aether puppets. They used to be an optimistic bunch, a bright bunch. Durance laughs at bright as if a private joke. Was their undoing. Should have embraced their misery without letting a farmer lead them to a brighter ruin. Almost Aethys puppets, too. Put an end to that. They dangled on his strings. Weidman dangled on theirs. They would never have had any success on the battlefield had not their god came down. The Saints' War. Needed to call on their god to have a chance. Tell me about the Saints' War. Durance's eyebrows draw together in a frown, then he grunts. Keep forgetting your feet are new to the Deerwood. The Saints' War.
It wasn't a war. It was a god stepping past himself. The country of Raid Saris and all their heathens. They're paying for it now. Although by my count, the fire should have roared through their country with more force, catching all their souls. Truth, it wasn't even a war. It was a cautionary tale about pride. Specifically, Widewood's pride. He should have stayed a farmer.
What happened? Was, 16 years ago? 2807? Durance pauses, then shakes his head and shrugs. My memories are back with a younger me. I don't hold on to dates. I hold on to actions and causes. The war was an act of arrogance born straight from Raid Saris' twitching legs. A man thinking himself more than a man. Want to kill someone? Tell him a god speaks through him. Then tell him he means him to lead, which puts him at the front of an army. Of any army. And the army was as strong as you'd expect for Raid Saris, as sick as that country was to begin with, yet a war was likely just what they needed. What was wrong with the country? Raid Saris has its share of troubles. It deserves all of them. It deserved the White One. He was the light that led them to flame. Raid Saris was in decline. Aether poison already eating its veins. Economic bleeding, the dying of their faith. Durance frowns. Then White One, this farmer, claims to take up Aethys in the flesh, and gives them the worst kind of hope. What happened then? They crown him. Durance taps his head, making a slight bow, and when his face turns back to you, he's wearing a feral smile. They make him king, the worst kind of blasphemy. And once he wears the crown on his head and the god in his flesh, why, he starts making changes. Divine changes. Durance's eyes blaze. Then he decides he's going to change us. Save us. How? He marches on the Deerwood to free us from our beliefs, like he freed the other souls from Raid Ceres. Cold Morn offers up its belly with no resistance, and it's spared. The bloodshed starts when he sacks Mercy Vale. A touch of irony, that. Puts it to the flame. Cold Morn? Durance spits and snarls. Cowards, and Cold Morn is an apt name for them. They lay still, frozen, while their fellows burned. They'll pay Magran's price one day for such cowardice. What did Eothas do next? Eothas keeps marching. Deerwood takes to the trees, cutting at his flanks, his scouts, his troops. It seemed near hopeless. Durance's face becomes grim, then smiles slightly, till Halgot Citadel, the Godhammer. There we put him to the flame, burned the god out of him, if there ever was one to begin with. A dozen brave men and women take to the bridge, make a stand. Then we torched him there with the fire of the Godhammer. What is the Godhammer?
Gods have taken flesh, in all respects, taking willing and unwilling vessels. It's not a violation, it's what gods do, as long as they accept all that comes with it. Men are weak. Gods? Well, we showed old Widewen that he was flesh and blood, no matter how much light was pouring out of his farmer's hands. Took men of faith to build a weapon. A Godhammer. Judgment. Proved him dead at Halgot Citadel.
It was a weapon of Deerwood's people, their independence. There are few that would deny that Eothas overstepped. The Godhammer reminded Eothas of this. A fire and force so terrifying, so bright, it burned a god away. Durance holds his staff. His hands lock around it, tracing the etchings. As you watch, the top of the staff blossoms, burns brightly, and Durance speaks, his face illuminated in the fire. A weapon that would burn brighter than Eothas, and we led him to it, and burned him at the stake. The stake was the Godhammer, and we impaled him on it. You said you fashioned it? Durance nods. Wasn't easy shaping it, crafting it, the pieces, the curve of the relic. Even then it was a massive thing, something that required a god to come to it, rather than be cast at him. The luring him to it, that was the easy part. Gods are prideful. What happened? We led him to the fields, the ones that he remembered as a farmer, perhaps. The fields right outside Halgot Citadel. Durance frowns. Now, Godhammer Citadel. It was right across Evan Dower Bridge. An easy trek. Durance frowns. Men died. Then more died during luring Eothas to Evan Dower. We had carved veins and paths through the bridge, excavated the foundations, filled them with powder and ember-hungry grains, eager to burn. Our hands had not even pried the mortar and rock loose, sharpened them to points so that they might be rent from their foundations easier, and tear through the flesh of that pretender. And so you used Evan Dower against Eothas?
We poured the Godhammer into its foundations with faith. Set it alight. Let the hammer fall, upwards onto the anvil. 8 died before the Godhammer fell, and the Godhammer claimed the remainder. 12 in all.
And Eothas went back to the ether, or the grave. He lost his voice and his love of war, I'll tell you that much. He sneers. It took only taunts by men, and that was enough to lure him across the bridge, and right into the new sun. Durance straightens his back and draws a deep breath. Let Raid Ceres see how bright their arrogance had become, and became a symbol by which we answered their purge with one of our own. Purges?
We started saving the Eothasians from themselves, burning any that didn't die with their god. Heresy in Raid Ceres is one thing. Heresy here in the Deerwood comes with a more personal touch.
It's interesting. Talking with Durance is kind of like chess almost. No, it does not seem just. So you just answered their crime with one of your own.
As I see it, every Eothasian who still lives in the Deerwood puts the nation at risk. Is another dagger held to the throat of our faith. Root them out, burn them, or send them back to Raed Ceres to wallow in the blood of their failure.
I want to ask about the region and its history. Next time we meet, we need rest. Okay, cool.
Sure.
Now we can go. I should have been talking to him more often during this bit, but I figured we should probably move on. Next time we camp, we'll take another crack at old Durance here. Where are we going? Oh, right. Okay. I got it. We're going to come back up here. Let's go ahead and move double time. So how are you guys doing? I'm doing absolutely wonderful. Well, I'm doing okay. Found out that my wife and son have a bit of a fever, so I'm getting in a bit of recording while my wife's doing her work, and little guy is asleep up in his bed. But hopefully this will pass by just fine. But it's always rough when you have a little one who's not feeling well. Sidley.
Hello.
The young woman wears a simple but well-tailored uniform. She watches the comings and goings around here with quiet attention. Any news to share? Or are you just here to see the Ducal Palace? Who are you? I'm a page here at the palace. I deliver messages and run errands for the Duke and his advisors. Pay's not great, but I can't think of a better introduction to politics. Looking for news? What's the Ducal Palace? It's the seat of government here in Defiance Bay. This is where Duke Admeth Hadret declared freedom from Adirian rule some 150 years ago. She lowers her voice and grins. It's also a hotbed of regional politics. Trust me, the gossip here beats what you'll find in any tavern or brothel in the city. Ah, Deerwood politics. It changes too quickly to be worth keeping up with. Better to strike up a conversation in the taverns than try to loiter inconspicuously in the palace corridors. What goes on in here? Where to start? We've got meetings, public hearings, and ceremonies, and that's just the stuff that happens out in the open. She leans a little closer. This is where the Duke and his key advisors work, so there's always someone bartering for a favor. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to talk about that side of things. But if you want the official version... She clears her throat and gestures counterclockwise around the palace. We have a shrine devoted to Magran, official records, and chambers for public hearings and council meetings. Tell me about the Shrine of Magran. It's a symbol of Magran's protection of Defiance Bay. She represented the revolutionary spirit of the Deerwood ever since independence, and her involvement in creating the Godhammer bomb only affirmed her importance to us. She scratches her neck. That's also where the first of the sacred fires burn, but Furga, the tranquil ardent, has had trouble keeping them lit. What kinds of records do you store here? Mostly dull official stuff, census counts, tax records, militia registers. Now, I keep my distance. I got curious one day and got drafted into reshelving half the records. Worst day of my life. Is there a hearing going on right now? Sure is. Duke Avar's been meeting with some of the city's leaders for weeks now, trying to figure out how to address the legacy. The whole business is terribly secret, though. I tried to sit in the gallery during my lunch break one day and got turned away. But a lot of the talk concerns animancy, so there's a good reason they're keeping the meetings behind closed doors. Why is animancy so controversial? Where to begin? Traditionalists think it's a crime against the gods. There's no question that poking around in souls is risky, but the more progressive elements believe that it's our only shot at restoring healthy births. And it doesn't help matters that that animancy research often involves old Ingwithan relics that were illegally looted from the ruins in Erik Glanfath. She makes a quick twitching motion with her index and middle fingers. So what do you think about animancy? Me? I think the real danger of animancy is confusing a real scholar with an expensive fake. We get a new case here every day. Some poor couple in the Gift or Copper Lane who spent every copper they had on a miracle cure for their unborn child. It never works. She shakes her head. It breaks your heart, but there's usually nothing we can do for them. I see. Anyway, the legacy is what politicians have all been whispering about lately. I'd like to ask something else. Of course, what's on your mind? Tell me about the current Duke. That would be Avar Wolfgren. Don't let the title fool you, though. Our dukes have been elected since independence. Some find Duke Avar rather coarse. He's a frontier noble. Personally, I think a rough and tumble type is just what Defiance Bay needs. Goodbye. Cool. Let's go ahead and see what's what in the temple. By your flame, a stone figure of a warrior gazes toward her raised hand. It's empty, but the palm and fingers are blackened.
How do you do?
Firga, the woman's head is bowed as her lips move in prayer. Just as you approach, you catch a glimmer, her glimpsing at the statue near her. She notices you and forces a smile. Praise be to Magran, and welcome to our temple. How may I be of service? Temple? I thought this was a palace. It's both, really. It's the palace from which Duke Avar governs, but it's also a place of honor and worship for Magran, the goddess who led us to independence and who has always watched over our city. Her smile falters. You seem upset. What's wrong? Her shoulders slump. It's about the fires, isn't it? This is about the fires, isn't it? She puts a hand on your shoulder. They're just symbols. You can't put your faith in them. Slow down and tell me what this is about. The sacred pyres all around town. You must have seen the statues of the goddess around the city, holding up empty braziers. I've kept them burning steadily for 15 years, but I haven't been able to conjure them for months now, and people need to see them more than ever these days. What does that mean? It's my devotions and prayers that keep them lit, but lately, when I try to pray, all I can think about are the hollowborn all over the city, the grieving families, the refugees. She shakes her head. How could Magran allow us to suffer like this? What strength do we gain from a soulless child? Durance grunts with disdain. What strength do we gain from adversity? From trial and test? The fires don't wither because she lacks faith. They wither because she does not understand how to be faithful to a whore. Wants neither praise nor devotion, wants to be compensated for her services, and Magran is paid and pleasured in sweat and struggle and pain. This mewling imbecile is unworthy of Magran's womanly heart. Take heart, and don't abandon your faith too easily. Durance is a little bit cruel. She nods. Hopefully, her hands clasped together. You're right, and fortunately, I believe Magran's been speaking to me again. She casts a quick glance in your direction. Lately, I've been seeing visions. A place in the wilderness with pools filled with sunbursts of color. Strange falls that seem to rise to the heavens, even when they splash into the earth. She raises her hands, as if framing an image of her vision. And behind the falls is a cave, filled with fire and heat and danger, and some token of my goddess. I know there's something there, but where it is or how I'd get there? She shakes her head. I've been meaning to ask around at the expedition hall to see if anyone recognizes the description. To be honest, though, I don't know what I'd do even if I found the place. Worthless, like so many of Magran's flock. Afraid of her god's tests. If Magran speaks to her, it is to hasten an end to a hypocrite's life, and this vision is surely a death trap for the weak. I'd like to know more about the temple here. Magran is the most revered goddess among us Deerwoodans, so it's no surprise that her temple is part of the ducal palace. Her fires symbolize trials, revolutions, and the blazing of new paths, all of which are important to us. She gestures to the statue. This is the first of the sacred pyres. When it's lit, so are the rest around the city. Something else? What's the significance of the pyres? Guidance, neighbor of the valiant princess, he is superstitious. Goodbye. Okay, well, that's actually going to be the end of the episode. If you've enjoyed, go ahead and hit that like button or give me some feedback if you prefer. As always, if you enjoyed my other work, then a subscription to the channel would also be most appreciated. Hope you'll come back next time. It's always great to see you all here at the Fox Den. I hope you'll come back next time and pull up a chair for some more Pillars of Eternity. Alrighty. You take care now. Bye.